Ryan Ries Show from Southern California. This is The Ryan Ries Show. Post your questions using @Ryan Ries on his Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Are you ready?
Tonight's show, I have Christina Boudreau in studio, right? In studio, and you just got back from India.
Yes.
And now I want to hear this because I've seen these photos that are just incredible with you with like all these Indian ladies in this like long street, and it's just packed with hundreds. I don't know how many, but it looks like it goes forever. Yeah. And then just all these other photos of you going to all these different villages. But I want you to give the full India experience to the listeners tonight so they can understand, because I've never been there. I'm gonna be honest, I'm a little scared of going out there. It's very far, and it is just it's very intriguing though. I do actually think I want to make it out on one of these trips with you, honestly. Yeah. So I have a question for you. First of all, how far is the flight when you go there, and how do you get there?
So the flight is close to 17 hours to Dubai, and then 6 hours down. So it is a gnarly flight.
Okay, so you go to Dubai, and then is there like a big layover?
Usually like an hour or 2 hours.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and then it's 2 hours down. Oh, sorry, like 6 hours down, depending on where you go in India. And I was just in southern India. And then this November and December, I'll be on the other side of the south part of India, and I have a layover in Qatar, which is like another part of the Middle East.
I've heard of that. Oh my gosh. Okay, so some of you guys that are listening right now that might not know Christina, she is actually one of the ambassadors of the Whosoever's movement. And she tours globally. We've toured together all over the United States and also in different parts of South America. But this particular trip, you went out there, and what'd you do exactly when you got there? Where'd you end up staying, and who were you working with out there?
Yeah, so one of my good friends, actually, two of my good friends are missionaries in India. They're nationals, so they're Indian. And the part of India I went to, they actually speak the same dialect as my mom, because my mom's Indian.
Right.
And so they speak Tamil. And so we were in southern India, and it's kind of a cool connection there. Just because, when I was there, I stayed with the missionaries. And so my friend, his parents actually head up the biggest widows ministry in southern India, which was the picture with all the ladies that you saw.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. So I actually want to talk about that first. That was really cool.
That's a lot of widows.
Yeah. So basically in India, like the widows, so, because India they actually wanted to change the name of the country to Hindustan because it's a Hindu nationalist government. And it's interesting because the Muslims and the Christians actually get along better in India than any other place in the world, because they are the two most persecuted people groups.
Really?
And so the Christians in India, when you think of Christians here, right, like it doesn't cost people anything to be a Christian here. Right. But in India, it costs them their life. Oftentimes, if someone becomes a Christian from a Hindu family, they are completely kicked out and ostracized from their family. If someone becomes a Christian and they have a church, pastors my friends there are regularly put in prison. They're regularly persecuted. They're they regularly have their churches burned down. They have a lot of persecution in India. And so they get their jobs taken from them. It's a lot. And so my friends basically in India, like because it's a Hindu government, within the Hindu religion, widows are seen as the lowest caste in India because they have a caste system. And so when someone becomes a widow, they're basically kicked out of their house, or they're taken to a part of a village and they're just dropped off. So as we're driving around India, you see these beautiful women, right? These grandmas, and they're in these saris. It's like their colorful outfits. And they're just curled up on the side of the road with flies all over them.
Really?
They're begging, because they're seen as a curse to the family.
Because like the
Hindu,
really?
and because of the whole Hindu religion, they believe that if you're a widow, you must have done something wrong in your past life.
No way.
And so
they have reincarnation.
Yes, and so my friends, they have this orphanage, and where basically, they started this orphanage in a village, for kids that have been abandoned because as we were talking about Sound of Freedom, trafficking is a huge issue in India, huge issue. There's a huge trafficking of children. And so my friends, all these kids that are abandoned, they take them and they start an orphanage. And then when they went to these villages, they saw all of these widows that had just been abandoned, that had no one. And so basically, say if you have like a house, right, where you have like someone's children with their spouses and kids living, as soon as they become a widow, they're kicked out of their house and they're forced to sleep in their backyard. If it's raining inside, if it's raining outside, the widows are not allowed inside.
What?
And so a lot of them are just like underneath trees, and then they just like get wet and they're begging on the side of the road. It is one of the most devastating things you've ever seen.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so my friends basically started this ministry called Sangita Hope about 15 years ago. If you guys want to know more, go to sangitahope.org. And they basically go to 17 villages, and they have 900 widows that are registered with their program. They bring, so that picture you saw, they bring all the widows to the compound. They share with them the gospel. That day I actually did a song for them, but it's by Hillsong. It's called Who You Say That I Am. And it says, who am I that the highest king would welcome me, right? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. And so I shared with the widows, like, that the king has a seat for them at his table, you know? And so my friends, they share the gospel with them. I sang for them. They said no one had sang for the widows in over 10 years, which was awesome. And they speak the same dialect as my mom. And so it was cool because I was able to share with them in their language, you know, just some words of encouragement, which was awesome.
So they were pretty stoked.
Yeah, they were super stoked. And basically after that, they pray for them and they give them enough rations for food that lasts a whole month.
Right.
And what this ministry does is that...
But really quick.
Yeah.
So these widows, they get the food from your friends, but they live in the streets. Like, there's no place for a widow to stay. There's no housing or anything.
There's no housing. So what my friends are doing is that they actually have built houses for these widows.
Right.
So they have like funding, and so they each build a house for these widows. And we went to this one widow's house where it was like a house on a compound, and then they built them this house where, you know, it's like just perfect enough for the widow.
Right.
And when we got there, I said, hey, like, who are these other people in this other house next door? And they were like, oh, that's their children and their grandchildren. I was like, they had to build a house, which was less than 10 yards from the main house, for the widow because they won't let their mom inside.
Are you serious? So it's like a full-on, like a religion thing. That
Yes.
is insane.
It's very sad. And so these grandmas, a lot of them, like, you know, they don't have like teeth. They're really cute, you know.
Of course.
When
you can
we
only imagine.
Yeah, for sure. And so these widows, as we just hugged them, prayed for them, like cried with them, I looked into their eyes and I just said, you are beautiful. Jesus loves you. And they just broke down because a lot of them are forced into prostitution. Really? A lot of them, for money, or their families will force them into prostitution. A lot of them, even when they get their food, this is the problem that they're having with their widows program right now, is that the widows will often get a ration of food, right, which is rice and lentils and some other things, and they'll go to their families, right, their kids and grandkids, to offer it, to say, hey, I can contribute to the family. Can you now let me inside? And they'll take the food and they'll still kick the widow out.
What the heck? This is just insane.
No, it's devastating.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful because this ministry has built so many houses for these widows.
Yeah, that's awesome.
They always come to their compound once a month. They're helping them with medical stuff. They're loving on them. And so when the Bible says, you know, that pure religion is loving the widows and orphans, that's what my friends are doing.
Yep.
And so my friends, that's like one part of their ministry that they have. But another part is that my friend, he's like the husband and wife. Their names are Paul and Grace. The husband was a national cricket player for India, like Olympic, status. He's older now. So with them, a lot of our outreach here, right, is like, we could do big crusades or we could do that, but in India, everything is underground, and it has to be underground because of the persecution. So for them, they reach the youth through sports ministry.
Right.
So they have this organization, kind of like FCA and different things, but they basically go to the slums and they start coaching kids like soccer, cricket, basketball, volleyball. And that's how the kids, basically they do Bible studies with the kids. Mm-hmm. They do these things called prayer cells where they go to their homes, and then from there they do Bible studies and they do a church on Fridays. And these kids, that's how they end up coming out of the slums, and they end up playing like professionally. Like even one of my friends down there, he came from the lowest slum in southern India, like horrible conditions, got saved through the sports program. He ended up he's now a pastor. He's now like like bringing all these kids out of the slums, coaching them. And so from there, that's how, we ministered to a lot of the kids in their programs.
I want to go back to the slums. So break down what these slums look like for people that don't understand.
So
what does a slum look like? And are these kids homeless, or are they living with their families in the slums?
Yeah, so the slums in India, my own mother, she grew up in Malaysia, where the Indians, like when you think of like how Mexicans are field workers here in California. Yeah. So the Indians are like field workers in Malaysia. So they grew up in like kind of like work camps. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I'm talking like not even cardboard boxes. They don't even have cardboard there. Right. I'm talking like they do put bamboo leaves together and they live in like these huts, or they call them like squatters, you know, no running water. They're on the side of the roads. They're like begging for food. We went to a lot of like churches. Like I did worship at some of these churches in the slums in India, and they literally will pack, it's like biblical times. They'll pack like 50 people in like a very small area, like in their like a one-bedroom house.
Underground churches too.
Yeah, they're underground.
Yeah,
they're underground churches, and these people literally have nothing. Like these girls, like that they take from the slums, right? And they like teach them, volleyball and all this stuff. Some of these girls play at a national level, and I went to one of their practices, and some of these girls, like I noticed one of the girls, I was like, why is she practicing barefoot? Like, this is volleyball practice. They were like, these girls, they have money for shoes. And I was just like, man. And so, like, my friends, so I had brought a certain amount. So I, like, was like, hey, get these girls shoes, like, for volleyball, so that they're able to go, like, far in their sport. Because when they go far in their sport, they're not able to only provide for themselves, but for their families. And so the slums in India are so incredibly devastating because, again, you have, even when we went to the slums, there's a lot of very slimy like people too, a lot of trafficking of children,
right? Because it's like the ghetto, so you have the traffickers, you have the drugs, you have all the corruption, prostitution,
so
within the
a lot of
slums.
Drinking, a lot of that. A lot of times, one of the issues we had, that a part of the widows ministry, these people, they basically go to the slums and they employ some of the women from the slums to hand make some things. Because basically their husbands will stay at home and they'll make the wives go prostitute themselves. The wives will come home with money and then the husbands go use it on gambling and alcohol. It is very devastating. Or they'll like sell their children and they'll prostitute their children out. Yeah. So it's very devastating. But in the midst of that, one of the days, for example, like I went.
This is why they need Jesus.
Yeah, this is why they need Jesus.
So bad.
Like we went to one of the slums one day to like. I led worship, and it was crazy because my first day I got to India, my hand was completely strained, where like my left hand, I couldn't even hold up my Bible. And I was so frustrated. I was like, what did I do with my hand, dude? And it was crazy because that first day we were leading worship. This was actually for some of the girls from the slums. The pain in my hand completely went away because it was like God gave me a grace, and then the pain came back after worship. Then the next day I was praying and I was like, Lord, just please heal my hand. And I was leading worship for these kids in the slums. There's like 40 people in one house, right? Like the 1-bedroom house. Yeah. Leading worship, and the Lord completely heals my hand. And I was just like, wow. And it was like so raw because these people, the only thing they have is the Lord, and they don't really have anything, but the little they have, they're willing to give. And so
you see a big difference between like American Christianity,
for sure,
and when you go outside of the United States,
Yeah, and so that was really cool. Like even in the slums, and so my friends from there, they have this program where they go into the schools, and the schools have opened up the doors for us, and these are like schools where 90% of the kids are Hindu and Muslim, small percentage are like believers. And so like, and my mom grew up Hindu. A lot of my mom's family is still Hindu. I'm visiting my mom's family in September for a couple weeks, and I walk into my family members' houses there, and they're very Hindu,
you know? The Hindu gods. I have a question about Hinduism.
Yeah.
Do you know how many gods they have, or it's like thousands, right?
Yeah, they literally have like hundreds. Definitely thousands of gods. But what's crazy is that in the Hindu faith, a lot of them, like for example, when I went to Malaysia, my cousin's a doctor. He owns like a 4-story house. Okay. Crazy, right? Crazy money. I walked into his house. This was in 2019. And he had like a cross of Jesus, a portrait of Jesus amongst all the Hindu gods. And I and I asked him, I was like, I was like, do you believe in Jesus? He's like, yeah, I believe in Jesus. And I was like, but why do you have all this other stuff? He's like, oh, he's one of the gods.
One of the gods.
So that's what a lot of the Hindu, that's a lot of what the Hindu people believe. And it's crazy because literally that was one of the things I saw when I went to India, is that on every corner in India, there's a little idol with someone who's assigned to that idol that day and night. They like worship the idol. There's people playing drums, like people in the streets, worshiping the idols. Yeah, they're very...
Like 24 hours a day.
24 hours a day. There's always people. And there'll be like drums coming through the street with like a cow pulling a cart with one of their gods. There's worship to their idols all the times. And that's one thing that...
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. So even within the Hindu temples in India, that's one thing that I love about the famous missionary Amy Carmichael, right? When she went to India, she saw that there was a lot of children being prostituted in the temples.
Really?
In India, in the Hindu temples, like they had like brothels, for the children in the temples.
What year was this when she was there?
I think she was there in like the early 1900s.
Really?
To the mid. And so Amy Carmichael helped, and I could be getting the time frame wrong, but it was in the last 100 years that she helped rescue a lot of these children, and she put an end to temple prostitution in India.
Wow, they were doing that back then.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because it was a part of their worship.
Yeah.
Which is what we see now in the mainstream world. It's a part of the worship, right, with everything happening. So long story short, so my friends, they go into the schools here, and when we went into the schools, we did assemblies for the girls. And one thing that I realized going to India is that women in India aren't valued. And 80% of women statistically have been raped, but 100% of women have either been sexually assaulted in public. This is like, you're on broad daylight, and there could be a girl walking home from school.
Yeah.
Someone will come by on a bike, a man will assault her and just go off.
Really?
Yes. Public transportation, same thing. Like, for example, right? We were at a school, and this one girl made a statement. She said this is a young teenage girl. She said the only place a girl is safe in India is in the womb, in her mother's womb, or in the grave.
No way, it's that bad. Why is it that crazy? I mean, it's just...
So, like, women there, like, girls there, that's why a lot of families, when they have a girl, they will often, there's a huge thing in India right now, my friends that are missionaries there have told me, because it's illegal to know the gender of a child before the child's born.
Okay.
So oftentimes in India, when someone has a girl, they oftentimes will kill the child, or they'll like kill the child through different areas, like through like, a pill or something, because they don't want to have to deal with having to protect their daughter.
Dang.
Because it's
I
that
couldn't
bad.
even imagine. I mean, just the thought of like, oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah, no, it's bad. Like women are followed, women are assaulted. If there's a man that approaches a woman or a young girl, right, and she, how like a lot of women get catcalled, right? If she, and a lot of women are stalked and followed. So if she, denies that guy, there's a huge thing right now in India where men will put acid in eggs and they'll throw acid on the woman to completely disfigure her, to tell her, if I can't have you, no one else will.
Insanity. So what did this girl in the school say?
So she said the only place a woman is safe, or a girl is safe in India, is in her mother's womb or in the grave.
So now when you're there with these girls, you're like, what are you telling them? So you're speaking to them?
Yeah, so we're going,
because you're in the public schools.
Yeah, so we're in the schools, and when we go into the schools, we're basically, because like I'm American going in, right? So they're like, yeah, for sure. So I'm going in, and a lot of what we do at Kill the Noise messages, it's the same thing.
Yep.
I share my story.
Yep.
I share the gospel.
You're allowed to.
Yes, yeah. I mean, like,
incredible.
They have anti-conversion laws, and so let's just say that a lot of the prayer of salvation wasn't really allowed, but I did it anyways.
It's like Mexico. You can't talk about God. Okay, and then we do it.
I do it anyways, because the teachers are outside the classroom. They're like, okay, cool. You can go in. And so I did, I shared, because that's one thing, I share about, even my story about, the gospel, the restoration of Christ. And I told...
Which your story has a lot of crossover with abuse and sexual assault and all that stuff.
Yeah, all of that. And so with a lot of these girls, I tell them, I'm like, listen, like, I share with them the full counsel of God, and I share with them, like, to follow Christ, you have to, I use the word idols, you have to put your idols away. Even one of my friends was like, Christina, we could get in trouble, right? And I was like, dude, we have to share, like, I need to lead these girls to Christ. Yeah. And
so, if they just add Jesus to all their idols, there you go.
For sure. Yeah. And so I did that. I did that at all these, at all these schools. And these girls are genuinely coming to Christ, because my mom came to know the Lord out of a Hindu background. Some of her family came to know the Lord out of a Hindu background.
Over there or here?
In Malaysia and here.
Okay.
Yeah, because some of them moved here. And it was actually funny. One of my aunts who came to know the Lord, she like gave all her Hindu gods to my other aunt who doesn't know the Lord. I'm like, no. We need to burn the idols. Yeah, you don't like. But one thing that's crazy, Ryan, even to go for a second, is that when I came, my friends in India, when I was there, they said to me, my that are strong believers, they said, it's crazy, Christina, is your country has just as many idols as our country does. And I was thinking, like, dude, we don't have these kind of idols on the corners. But she's like, you do. But Satan has just disguised himself through music, through the mainstream world, that so many people are bowing down, but just in different ways, But anyways, and so when we go into the school, same things. I'm sharing with these girls just about, their value in Christ and how and the gospel and who God is as a father. And this one girl, for example, at a school came up to me and she just said, I've never told anyone this, but she was living, long story short, with several family members who were regularly sexually abusing her, which is a story of these girls in India. Because when you're Indian people live in communities. So say, for example, if you have your parents, right? And if you get married and your siblings get married and you all have children, you all live under the same roof. So growing up, and that's just how they do it.
They used to do back in in those days too.
Yeah, for sure. So they all live within community. And so for her dad, this girl's dad had died. And so when she told her mom, like, hey, these people are sexually abusing me, her mom was like, shh, just please be quiet, because we have no one here to protect us.
Right.
And that's the same thing with, what her mom said.
Unbelievable, man.
Just
crazy. So, I mean, now here they're hearing about God and they're putting their faith in Christ. Now, are they able to, so you were going to different schools, right? And then are they able to, how's your group able to stay plugged in with them or what do they do next? I mean,
Yeah, for sure. So even with this girl, we were able to share with the principal, and the principal of the school is actually a believer, which is awesome.
Perfect.
So she was able, she's dealing with that situation. So basically, we went to all the schools where my friends who are working with this sports ministry are present. So we're able to plug them in, with the sports ministry. Right, and from there, they have their prayer cells in church and all that stuff. So that's how a lot of this,
You know what's interesting? It's so gnarly, like when you go into these areas, because it's not like the American Christianity where you can go in, share the gospel, and you're like, okay, guess what, guys? Like us in the school. So right now, you guys all gave your life to Christ. There's the Bible club right there. Yeah. This is the main guy. You could come here at 2 o'clock or at lunch at this classroom. There, it's a whole different program.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like God opens these doors to go into a school where you can't talk about God or Christ or do anything. And here God opens the door, you're sharing. It's just, it's what I'm trying to say is everywhere you go in the world, there's a different technique because just depending on the situation.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's what I love about, like, one of the missionaries there, him and his wife had up the Widows program. He was saying that a lot of because they have leaders that come from all over India that come to like a training kind of camp they do like once a year. And he said that like 2 of their people were just put in prison because of like, they were sharing the gospel.
Yeah.
With these young people. And he said something, he's like, one thing I told them was, what a blessing that you get to suffer for the Lord in this way, that you've been imprisoned for the gospel. And that's how they see it. Like they see it as a blessing.
How do they do it there in prison? Is it like a certain amount of years or like a couple months or a fine or?
I think a lot of it is like, it's like pretty much up until they basically say, okay, I'm not going to keep doing what I'm going to be doing anymore. Right. Or they might give them a certain amount of time. They didn't get into a lot of those details.
Yeah. That'd be interesting. to find out, because China, I mean, it's pretty gnarly too.
Yeah, no, for sure. And they don't look like, and my friends were even saying that the Hindu government, like say like on Easter Sunday, right, if there's different churches in India, they have a lot of the Hindu government nationals that go and sit in on these services to see what they're doing.
Oh yeah.
And the way they threaten them. So he said that on Easter Sunday he had given a message at his church, and there is one of the Hindu national government people that came up to him and was basically threatening him and was like, show me your books, because that's the only way they can get to them, right? And he's like, okay, and he's like, we're clean. Everything we do is like, whatever. Yeah. But they look at their books to see what ministry they're doing in the street with the widows, with the outcasts, with the orphans who are seen as the lowest caste, which threatens their way of life, which is, their Hindu government.
Wow.
So it's pretty crazy how, and that's what they even, the Indians in India even told me. They were like, Christina, honestly, what we experience here is coming to your country. Yeah. They're going to try to shut you guys down too. Like, we're already seeing it by like what we're allowed to say in church.
Right, with the free speech and all that. Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, I heard recently, I think it was the UN, they had AI rewrite the Bible. Did you hear about that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's probably like that really, they rewrote it, so it's probably not offensive. Right, to anybody. And there's like a new world church. My mom just sent me a picture. It's like all the different religions can all worship together. So what the Bible teaches, it's all coming, but it's actively, the persecution, what we're seeing in these other third world countries, communism and different things, you're going to see that here in America.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, how many schools did you hit when you were out there?
So we basically did 4 schools, but at each school we did multiple assemblies because the schools are so big.
Right, yeah.
So we did I think total, I thought originally it was around 800, but my friend came back. She's like, no, it was like 930 something girls we hit.
Dang, that's amazing.
Which is huge in India because they, most of these girls have never, like this one girl came up to us at a school and was like, I was sexually abused my whole life, but no one ever told me it was wrong.
Really?
Yeah.
So, because they just grew up like that's just a normal way of life. Everyone, it happens to everyone.
And so they don't, and it's a shame-based culture. So if you talk about it, you're ostracized. If you talk about it, you're seen as like, you're basically shamed. And
that's
so
how they keep it all undercover.
Yeah. And that's what I love about Jesus. Like I was reading over here, earlier, just like even the story of the woman at the well, and just the woman who was caught in adultery, or just like all these women in the Bible. I feel like what Jesus did in biblical times is what my friends are doing now in these places in India. They're giving these women back their value. Mm-hmm. They're giving them back their voice. And, we talk about like women's rights here in the U.S. and all that stuff, but like, and people are like, oh, Jesus like empowered women, but I'm like, no, not in the way that you're doing it. Yeah. Jesus basically valued women, that the basic value that a woman has or that a girl has that's been taken from them by, them being cast out, like the widows or these girls that are being sexually abused or assaulted. Jesus restored value back to women in those ways. Yeah. Not women in the way of making women to be men, right?
No, exactly.
Yeah,
don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to be going to a break in a minute, but this is incredible. Christina Boudreau, just out in India, touring the schools in a place where they have found, I think, they have to have like hundreds of thousands of gods or something. I mean, I read on it. It's like something crazy. Like they have a God for everything, and Jesus Christ is one of them. Yeah. And there's also in India, I've seen some documentaries and stuff, there's a lot of witchcraft because when you start messing with those gods, a lot of demonic stuff, they're putting like those knives through their lips and their tongues and their nose, and they're walking on like their knees for miles upon miles. I mean, you can't just do that stuff in your right mind. I mean, it's pretty gnarly. And then the prostitution with the kids back in the old days, pedophile,
and that's still and that's still happening. Just not so much in the temples now, but there's a lot of trafficking of kids. But there's the biggest thing right now is organ trafficking,
harvesting of organs. I was just talking to John Randall about that. Well, we're gonna come back after the break. But dude, thank you for going. This is intense. Crazy stuff that's going on over there in India. Don't forget, listeners, go to Ryan Ries Official on YouTube. We have all of our past shows. I've had Christina on several times talking about different tours in the different parts of the world. Go to the whosoevers.com. You can check that out. We tour we tour all over the world. I mean, all over South America, Central America, United States, India. We went to Australia. We will go anywhere. Invite us out. We'd love to bring the gospel to your city, in your schools, to your churches, wherever God opens the door. We'll be back in 2 minutes after the break. Peace.
More of The Ryan Ries Show coming up. Post your questions at Ryan Ries on his Instagram, Twitter, and or Facebook. Now, back to The Ryan Ries Show.
Studio with Christina Boudreau. She is one of the Whosoever ambassadors, and you've heard her on the show many times. And she's she's been touring all over the place. I mean, we went down to Chile together. We went down to Iquique. You've been on several trips in America, California, and now we're just talking about this India trip. So before the break, we were just talking about the culture, about the slums, widows when they lose their husband, they kick them out of their home. I mean, just crazy stuff, even pedophilia within the temple back in the old days. But now I want to hear about you, some encounters you had, because I know you went to schools, as we were talking about, sharing the gospels in the public schools in India, which is like insane. It's illegal. And the door's open for you. So tell me some cool encounters that you had with a couple individuals.
Yeah, so it was really cool. I mean, we were at this one school where I went and we did 2 classes. It was kind of break it up into age groups, I did a group of like the older girls, and it's crazy how the girls in India, like, they come from these gnarly areas, but the same issues we see here in the U.S. is the same issues they have there.
Like what?
Like that, because a lot of them have experienced abuse. A lot of them are suicidal. Like even there was this girl that's a part of their like sports like ministry that had committed suicide right before we went there, and suicide's very common because a lot of these girls feel like there's no way out. A lot of these women feel like there's no way out. Like they're trapped in a culture where they are being abused at home, assaulted on the streets, even on public transportation. They're molested on public transportation because there's so many people in a bus,
No way.
And so they truly feel like they're nothing. And so we went to this school, and as I just started sharing with these girls, these girls are older. They're like juniors and seniors in high school. I could see in their eyes, that, and there's a culture, and they're a culture, the Indian culture. I come from the Indian culture. It's a culture where everything's based upon performance and perfection. So these girls are raised to become doctors. They're raised to succeed. And so any type of weakness, any type of sharing about struggle is looked down upon.
Got it.
And so with these girls where they're forced, it's like straight A's, perfect in school, perfect in sports, like it's an unrealistic expectation they have that, I could see in their eyes. And so at the end, I had the girls close their eyes at this, for the older classes. And I said, if you've been sexually abused, can you raise your hands? Dude, so many of these girls' hands were raised. I said, if you're dealing with cutting or depression, raise your hands. So many of these girls raise their hands.
Wow.
If you're dealing with suicide, raise your hands. So many of these girls raise their hands. And, we prayed for them to receive the Lord, praying, against just a lot of the oppression, all this stuff. Absolutely. And it was crazy because when I transitioned from that class to go to the next class, there was a younger group of girls. This was probably
was that junior high?
It was probably I think like seventh grade to like sophomores in high school. Yep. There was like a few grades, and I just began to ask questions. And this is like the first time in these girls' lives that they're talking about these issues. Where I'm asking these girls, like, what are some of the pressures that you face today? And this one girl's telling me, because in the Indian culture, in the southern India, these girls are darker skinned, and in the north, they're lighter skinned. And if you're darker skinned, what a lot of these girls do is that they get this cream that they put on their face that basically bleaches their skin to make it lighter, which is crazy because here in the U.S., people try to get tan. And so, it's crazy. Yeah. So these girls are telling me, this one girl's sitting in the front row, sobbing, telling me about how her whole life was bullied. She was told that she was like a dog. She's tried to bleach her skin and just telling me about her issues. And then she now feels like she has a voice. So this other girl starts telling me about how she was bullied because of her body, that she was bullied because people said she was too big, and so she stopped eating, and so she now is like too small, and then she's bullied because she's too small.
Oh my gosh.
And then one by one, like all these girls, it just became almost like a group counseling session with Jesus, where these girls are just sharing about their struggles, about what they have gone through with depression, what they've gone through, with suicide and all these things. And these girls, I prayed, they received Christ. And, and on the way out, like, I'm just like hugging them, praying over them, telling them like how much they're loved by the Lord. Because that's the thing, like when we go into these places, the only thing I could offer people that is lasting is the gospel. Yeah. Is the love of Christ. Yep. And so by me going in and even like praying for them to turn to Jesus and put away their idols is technically illegal. Yep. But I realized like this is the only chance, like Jesus is coming back. Yeah. Like the whole, like even this weekend I'm teaching at Sonia and David Trujillo's women's conference at their church, and they gave me the passage of the virgins, with their lanterns being lit to be brought in, and then the banquet halls are going to be shut. Like I want to make sure that the seats in Jesus's house are filled. I'm not going there to be like, oh, you're loved and you're valued. Like that has no lasting impact on a girl who's being assaulted, abused, like her whole life. That doesn't do anything for them. And so, that was like a couple of the stories. And there was this other school we went to where this girl, same thing. There was an older group of girls, and we were talking about just a lot of the at that specific session I was talking about gender identity, which is starting to come into their schools, right? Oh yeah.
I was going to ask you about that. So what we're seeing over here, is that happening?
Yes, it's happening too in India, but for them it's different, because in the United States you have like it's an attraction issue, right? It's like people want to change their genders and they're attracted to so and so. But with these girls, I asked them the question. I said, how many of you have ever maybe thought like, I want to be a boy? So many of them raised their hands, and I said, well, why?
Oh, different reasons.
Yeah, and they said, well, if I were a boy, we're protected. Yep. If I'm a boy, I'm safe. I have more freedom. And I'm just thinking, man, like these girls want to be a gender other than what they are, specifically because it's a protection issue. Yeah. And then I began to ask questions, well, why? And then this girl's like telling me like, well, because if I'm walking home from school, I won't be assaulted. This other girl, if I take the bus, I won't be molested. Right. This other girl, I don't have to worry about, because, the sun sets earlier during the wintertime. If I'm walking home from soccer practice, and these girls, the slums, they don't have transportation. Right. Like I won't get catcalled. Or this one girl had told us, because we had an event that went later, and we were like, hey, can we get you, they have these like tuk-tuks, they're like open, or like an Uber. We were like, hey, can we get you an Uber or something? She said, no, I'd rather have the tuk-tuks. It's like almost like a bike that has the thing. I think you guys rode one in the Philippines. Yeah. She said, I'd rather take that. And we were like, well, why? It's going to take longer. She said, well, because if I go into a car, they can't drive around the corner, lock the doors, and rape me. God,
it's just like that.
Yeah, she's like.
Are there? Is there just like a bunch of like unwanted kids, or
Yeah, so obviously, so what often happens in India, Ryan,
I can't believe it's just so crazy.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your mind around. Yeah. But one of the things that happens in India is that these young girls in the Hindu faith, they could be 12, 13 years old. And we were in a city in southern India, but 70% of India is like villages. I'm talking like Jesus time villages. Right. Like very poor, like nothing. Like there's like cow, even in the city, there's like cows walking around. It's like really gnarly. And these young girls are often married, like 12, 13 years old. They're married to men in their 40s and 50s, right?
What? That happens out there too?
Oh, for sure. That's normal there. So these young girls.
I heard that was like, some tribes, in Africa or whatever. But yeah, that happens in India.
Yeah, arranged marriages. It's like these young girls with these older guys. And so oftentimes, even within villages, they often get married to like their cousins. And so they have children, of course, that have, special needs who are also outcasted. It's so sad, dude. So anyway, so you get these young girls.
Well, this is what happens when you get God out of the equation.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? This is like a godless.
For sure. So you get these young girls that get married off to these older guys. And, they might have a couple kids, and then these older guys, will die. So you have this young single mom. At this time, she could be 20 with 2 kids. As she's more eligible to get married again. But the new husband she gets married to is like, well, I don't want your kids, right? You got to ditch the kids. So the wife will just ditch the kids on the side of the road to get married to this new husband, because that is the only way she could be safe in her eyes.
Oh my
so now these kids get picked up. They're trafficked. They're forced into prostitution. They get their organs harvested.
Yeah. So I was just gonna actually hit you on that one, the organ harvesting.
Yeah.
So that's a thing out there too.
Yeah.
And you get organs that they sell the organs basically.
Yeah, it's like the trafficking, but a trafficking of organs.
Oh my gosh! You know what? It's so interesting. It's so crazy how the world is so dark, and this is why Jesus has to come again.
Yeah, no, it's sad, but
until that time, we just got to keep getting out in front of people and letting them know that God loves them.
Yeah,
and that
Yeah, so even for example, right, we went to a slum one night, and this is one of the slums. There was like a small house church, and we did worship. And even when we pulled up in the slum, there was a lot of slimy guys around. But my friend, we went with a couple of our guy friends. And even when we got out of the car, just the way that they look at women.
Right.
Just the way that they were catcalling certain things.
Really?
Even like walking up to my friend, he was like, who are these chicks? Like it's very dark.
Dude, that's scary.
It's very sad. And so basically, so that's why a lot of these kids, there's a lot of orphans, a lot of orphanages in India. But it's sad because there's actually a movie that came out, I think that was popular for a while on Netflix, called Lion. And it was about this. Yeah, you've probably seen it. It's this young boy, who got lost, from a village in India, found himself at an orphanage, got adopted here into the U.S. And even his journey in India, where just people do just pick up kids. Or what happens is that you might get over here in the U.S., you have pimps that will prostitute people out. But with children, what they often do is that they'll have a bunch of kids. They obviously pimp them out sexually. But what they do is that they have them go out and they sell a certain amount of items to like people. And if they come back without those items, like a certain amount of money, they get beaten, all these things. And so it is that's another vicious cycle that's happening in India. But anyway, so this girl, we were at this school. This girl, I'm talking to these girls, and this is their daily life.
Yeah.
Daily life of they can't even go to school and come back. Or a lot of these kids, their parents leave very early in the morning. I'm talking 4 a.m. and they come back late at night just to provide enough food for them. So these kids are raising themselves. And this girl was telling me, she was crying and crying because I did the same thing. I said, I had them close their eyes. I'm like, if you've been sexually abused, raise your hands. And she was just crying with her hand raised. I pulled her aside after and I said, I have that same story. And I told her, I said, what happened? And she said it had happened 2 years earlier. She was out just like going to the grocery store.
Yeah, just a normal day.
Walking home from soccer practice, right? She was raped. And she said because of that, she had a lot of issues, like depression or just different things. And of course, when that happens.
There's no value for women.
There's no value for women. And of course, because of that, when that happens to you, you're kind of seen as like, when they speak up about it, people tell them, well, you were probably asking for it.
Yeah, of course.
It's probably your fault, right?
Yeah.
And so this girl, just sharing with her the love of Christ, showing her just the redemption that she has in Christ. You could see how the gospel and what Christ was, the same Jesus that gave women back their value, who are seen as nothing in biblical times, is the same Jesus that's doing it today.
Yeah.
In the lives of these girls in India. And things that they have never talked about because it's a culture of shame. Yeah. Right?
Now they're opening up. And which that's probably frees them a lot too, because when you're carrying all that, then you're actually hearing it, that there's other people going through it, and then you're sharing with them with God. There's freedom can come through that, even though they're in that crazy situation. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, it sounds like India was heavy.
Yeah, it was super heavy, but it was so good. So that's why I want to encourage the listeners too, is that there's all of these things happening in India, but in the midst of that, during my trip, I saw the Lord truly open up these girls' eyes for them to see their worth in Christ.
Yeah.
These Hindu and Muslim girls gave their lives to Jesus.
Yep.
The widows, right? God is doing an amazing work with the widows, the orphans. And so in the midst of that, God is commissioning the believers in India to be the answer to these issues in their countries, which is what I'm seeing, which is really awesome.
Well, keep going out there. When's your next trip? It's coming.
I'm going in November to December.
November. So everybody keep Christina in prayer. And you're also about to take off here in a couple days to Chile with my mom and her crew.
Yeah.
And then meet up with Sebastian down there in Iquique, Chile. So you're going to hit Santiago, Chile, and then I think like Viña and a couple other, it's like 7 cities you said?
Yeah, so we're going to Viña del Mar, we're going to Valparaíso, we're going to Quilpué, we're going up to Iquique, Alto Hospicio, Calama, and Antofagasta. And so, yeah, those are the areas we're going to. And the same thing, like Sebastian even told me a couple days ago, he was like, the most communist school in Viña del Mar has opened the doors for us to come in.
Are you serious?
It's right around the corner from their Congress.
Obviously, you're going back to Chile actually this month. So you pumped on going back to Iquique and then plus all the other, I think you're going to 7 other cities.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm excited. Like we all toured there in November of last year. Your dad and the guys came down for a pastor's conference, which was awesome. Yeah. And I think when I was there in Chile, there was just so many of these girls, just that every girl I talked to at the schools, it was just like there was even a school that you did. I think that was one your dad went to one day, and and you're just, you spoke that day and did the altar call, but you're like, hey guys, Christina's here, and in her story, she's gone through all these things. And you just named a few things. And I had like a line of girls. Like you would have, like how it would be at a church event and just girl after girl's coming, crying. And I'm having Sebastian helping me translate and we're praying for these girls. And it happened with all the schools. And so the Lord was just really stirring my heart in December of last year when I got back. And I was like, man, Lord. So he just kind of put a vision in my heart to go back in the schools and to do a girls' conference. And, I talked to you. You're like, dude, yes. I talked to your mom. Literally, the moment I asked your mom, she was like, yes, I will send you. Dude, it wasn't even like I was trying to plan like the perfect time to talk to her. I'm like, okay, I'm going to share with her my vision. I was going to get it. I had the whole game plan. It was one day after women's study. She was like, there's my colorful girl. How are you? I was like, oh, I've been wanting to talk to you. Because, we're all busy, Yeah. And she was like, oh, like, tell me. And I was like, oh, okay. So I told her, and without flinching, she was like, I will send you. And it just truly has turned into this beautiful trip.
30 schools, plus the women's conference and the other
the girls' conference we're doing prisons, we're doing 3 skate contests.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a full-on.
Yeah, we're doing a full-on thing, so.
You picked up on the mega tours where I left off. I was doing mega tours, and then all of a sudden, and that's when you guys were all being raised up, and now you guys are continuing the big mega tours. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
So that's thousands and thousands of kids in a short period of time. Amazing.
Yeah, so I'm really excited, Lexi's based out of Calvary, Reno, and they're like, they love her, so they're supporting for her to come, And then I have, Callie, Tyler's wife.
Is she going?
She's
from Idaho?
Yeah, she's coming that last week. We're in Iquique.
Dude, that's amazing.
So her church is funding for her to come too.
Yes.
And she came out to Texas with me, when I was in Texas, and she stayed with me and just saw the Lord use her life. And her and her husband, they do skate park ministry. Yep. So the Lord totally blessed her for her trip, and so she's going to be staying with us that week. And I saw her like share her story, and it was funny. We were even in Texas, and I'm like, at this point, I'm doing like worship. I'm bringing my guitar. We're doing the message, the afterglow, and everything. And there was a day that I was like, hey, man, can you help me sing? She's like, yeah, because I'm like, my voice is going out. And she's saying so well. I'm like, bro, where were you all week?
Serious?
Yeah. So I'm like, let me just play good chords in the back and you sing.
Dude, that's amazing.
And Callie has an amazing story too, of just going through all these things these girls have gone through. And so she's like, Tyler's sending her with some of their skate product, for a skate contest. She's going to be sharing at the girls' conference. So it's cool because I see the Lord raising like Lexi up and Callie up, and Callie's just coming that last week, but Lexi will be with me for 2 weeks, and we were at a school in Chile, and we were actually at a sports school, right? It was the last day. Yeah. And it was cool because
I didn't go that day because I was studying.
Yeah, but it was cool because that same team where it's me, Lexi, and Sebastian is the same team for this time.
Dude, it's gonna be amazing.
And it was cool because Lexi, and it wasn't even, I didn't even ask her. We were at a school that Sebastian was, they always tell us about the school. Sebastian said, all these kids at this school, they all play professionally for Chile, soccer and all these things.
Right.
And so Lexi was like, hey, Christina, can I share my story with these kids? And she used to be a pro snowboarder.
Yeah.
And has a testimony with that. And I was like, you're up to bat, dude. And so I told her, I said, dude, okay, do the altar call. She's like, no. I'll share, and then you do the altar call. Yeah. And I was like, okay, cool, dude. So I'm thinking, no worries, dude, but you're going to do the whole thing. Yeah. So she gets up. She's like, I'll just do like 5 minutes. And then, so she's like 12 minutes in, right? I'm like, take it home, Lexi, take it home. She does the altar call. All these kids come forward. She's praying for them. And I was like, we have, she's got it,
She has it. God did that. I know. I saw that photo and I was like, I told her, I said, hey, Lexi, I said, God's giving you not only you have the story, you know, and it's so relatable. It wasn't like the drugs and alcohol, but it was like competition and competitive and discipline and like an athlete, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And she talked about body image. She talked about suicide, all this stuff. Yep. And it was cool because I was even on the phone with Lexi a couple days ago. I'm like, we're getting ready for Chile because I leave Monday. And she's like, Christina, she was like telling me, she's like, dude, it's been a crazy couple weeks. I'm like, why? She's like, she's hosting, long story short, a youth conference. She pitched a vision for a youth conference to her church at Calvary Reno.
Yeah.
3,000 kids from her whole area in Reno are coming together for this conference that she's hosting.
Dude, that's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
For a youth conference?
Yeah.
That is massive.
So Lexi's like, I've been planning it. She's like putting together this whole stuff. And I see her now, I think she's 22 now. And just how the Lord's using her life. So when we go to Chile, we're basically just switching off. Like, I'm going to do a school. She's going to do a school. Sebastian's going to do a school.
Dude, that's perfect.
Skate contest.
I'm excited to hear about this.
Yeah.
Because now she did that one, but now she's going to get in more. And with all three of you guys, it's going to be awesome, man.
Yeah.
Last time it was really cool in Chile. Well, you know what really just blows my mind is that Chile actually kind of has like communism embedded in their new government. So the fact that you guys are able to go back and go into the schools, and even in you guys are going to Santiago, which is the main Chile.
Oh yeah, so we're not doing schools in Santiago, but we're going to be on the coast in Viña, Valparaíso, and El Quisco.
Well, that whole area. I mean,
very communist.
You got to understand, like the coast is only 40 minutes, I think, from Santiago. Yeah. So you're still in the hub, where Iquique is in the very north.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So you guys are still in the belly of the beast down there. But that's amazing that God's opening those doors, and I cannot wait to hear the stories.
Yeah, and we're actually, I was talking to Sebastian a couple days ago. He's like, dude, the most communist school in Valparaíso is allowing us to come in. Wow. And he's like, it's right around the corner. It's like, they're only 5 minutes apart. He's like, it's right around the corner from the Congress building. He's like, I think the principal just looked at the form and was like, cool, you guys can come in. He's like, I don't think they know that you guys are going to pray. And
God opens the doors.
He does.
Maybe he blinded them, but the gospel is going to go forth. People are going to get saved.
So many kids.
That happened to us when we were in Iquique. Remember there was that one guy that was there. He was a teacher, and Sebastian's like, that guy, he hates God. He's anti-Christian. Ever since I gave my life to God, because they used to play music together. Yeah. Once he gave his life to God, he stopped talking to him. Yeah. And he was there, and I remember I introduced him. Yeah. He introduced me to him, and then while I was speaking, he was so mad. He was so angry, and all kinds of kids got saved. It was epic. Yeah. And God's going to keep doing it. So keep Christina in prayer. And keep all the missionaries in prayer and the people that are doing the work in India and the people in India, and pray for Christina and the team as they go down to Chile, that God will open the doors and many will get saved, and that people will literally go after Christ and get discipled. Because, Sebastian, he's a pastor down there in Iquique, and then you guys are going to be with all the other Chile pastors. I mean, we have several churches that are church planted from this church. So you're going to be within... with all those pastors, and what's going to be awesome, they get to actually see it live, because last time they weren't there for our school tour. Mm-hmm. So now when you guys go down, they're going to actually see it down in their cities happening with the outreach. And then you guys got churches that are boots on the ground there. So
and one thing that's cool is that we're going to this one area that's right outside of Iquique called Antofagasta and Calama, and basically there's a guy there that wants to start a Bible study to plant a church. And so Sebastian said he's going to be going up there a couple times a month. And so this tour is going to be the start of planting of a church with all the kids. And we're doing a big like event in the town square.
Yeah.
The mayor of the city was like, can we provide for you guys a stage with like lights? We were
Hook
like,
it
sure.
up.
Yeah.
It's like Mexico.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. God, where God guides, God provides. That's a big thing within our movement. We, Chuck Smith told us that. And you know what? It's so true.
Yeah.
That's how you know that he's in it, because he's going to get it done. He's going to provide every step of the way.
Yeah.
Well, keep her in prayer. Go to the whosoevers.com and actually book us. Book Christina to come out to your state, to your city. We are touring all over the globe, constantly invading the public schools. That's the battleground, bottom line. You've heard the story today. No matter where you go, India to Chile to basically right here in Orange County, California, or LA, or Florida, it's all the same. Kids are going through the same stuff, and we are living in crazy times. People need to know that God is real. His name is Jesus Christ, and he wants to have a relationship with him. Check out the whosoevers.com. Check out YouTube. Go to our YouTube and type in Ryan Ries Official, and you can subscribe to the YouTube station and get all the past shows and get them, share them. There's tons of stories of tours. There's tons of interviews. There's question and answers. I have really amazing guests on, and we have years and years of content for you guys to go through, get discipled, get filled with the Spirit, read the Word of God, and have God just transform your life. We love you guys, and thank you. Peace.
This has been The Ryan Ries Show. To connect and find out more about Ryan, click on ryan-reese.com. Check us out next Saturday at 9 p.m. for The Ryan Ries Show.